Hello and welcome back to Oh No, Not Another Podcast. It's been quite a while since I've done one of these, but boy oh boy, I'm excited for it. I got Mr. Snare and Mr. BobEuls with me. It's been a while, but there's a lot to talk about in this fledgling 2018 Dota 2 season. Don't you gentlemen agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're back for round 2.
The first thing to mention is a $5 million prize pool for TI8 in less than 24 hours. Just putting it out there.
Their game.
Fastest growing companion ever, and what does Bob take the time to do when he sees that? Tweet flame at Mo Salah. Toxic Bob. Toxic Bob.
Toxic Bob. Don't forget the hashtag, dude. Hashtag Toxic Bob.
Oh yeah, hashtag. Dude, I almost forgot. Oh, this is why I'm irrelevant, guys. Forget the hashtags, man. Can never make it from the big time on
Can
social
never
media.
trend, dude. Can never go trending.
Yeah, dude. Feels so bad, man. So, guys, it's actually been a super long time since we did this. Bob was actually our first guest on this podcast, but we aired the Barry one first because we're like, Barry's more popular and stuff. But Bob had double the hits on my YouTube channel. I'm just putting it out there, lads.
Bob's flame game is too good. Who wants to?
Dude.
I would never.
Dude, I was at like a 5 level there, dude. You want to see me go 6? You might get it tonight.
You don't want to hit the full Mo Salah levels. Okay, so let's get into it straight away, right? First thing I'd like to talk to you guys about or your opinions on, like, I feel like a thing to talk about at the moment is hostility in the Dota 2 scene, right? We've seen the changes now, Elite Pro dropping TKC and Chelsea, Aperture Gaming sort of disbanding now, or rather rebuilding now with Chicktay and Wop joining Elite Pro. It's like we had this big three with WRG, Elite Pro, and Sin 5, and now it's just kind of all jumbled up. Bob, what's your take? Oh, Snare, you can go.
Yeah,
give us your take first.
Okay, in a way, I feel like why are you throwing me under the bus? I'm not the one that's been casting the game to see the salt. But I don't know. I feel like one of the things, the running theme for I think throughout the entire conversation today is going to be the expectation of what 2018 was supposed to be versus the reality, right? And we sort of all, at the end of 2017, seeing Sin 5 seemingly on the rise. It seemed like it was good times seeing Bravado getting back together. The Elite Pro squad looked like they might have something to do, some younger players to try and mentor. And then instead of having, I think I anticipated WRG just staying at the top forever because whatever, that's just them. Bravado right behind them, Sin 5 right behind them, and then sort of a rising tide lifts all boats for the rest of the team at the bottom. But then what just ends up happening is not even a reshuffle, just all the really strong players are on one team now, it feels like. Doesn't seem like... It seems Elite Pro is going to be worse than the WRG in terms of just being the big dog. Like, who's going to challenge them and who's going to... It doesn't seem like it's sustainable at all, right? It's just super top heavy now, even more so than it used to be. And that's never a good recipe for a cohesive environment amongst the players in general.
Yeah, to quote a good friend of mine, his quote was like, it's the classic cliche, top MGO pulling players from one team into another team and just eye on the prize with no sort of thought on the rest of the scene. I'm not flaming Elite Pro for this. I understand from their perspective why they did what they did, because obviously for them it's a simple decision, right? You break up one good team, you get the top players in your team, and then they kind of look, at the moment it's kind of looking like they set for number one in SA, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think Pro kind of have the resources that other MGOs don't really have at the moment. They think they pay quite a hefty price for the WG players, but I think WG players kind of were going in a different direction as far as I recalled, or the rumors kind of said. I think this was kind of starting from like the beginning of last year, even. I think a lot of them, I wouldn't say a lot of them because there's only like 5, right? But like I think 1 or 2 of them wanted to go overseas and trying to really commit to the full-time thing. And I think this is where the kind of hostility comes in, right? People want different things. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Nick Doto, Schlinks, and I can't remember who else. Travis.
Yeah,
I think those two wanted to really commit full-time to Dota. And it was it's just hard in South Africa to find 5 people who want the same thing, especially in terms of Dota. And let alone make a team and make it work and fill all these different roles within the Dota team, like support, carry, etc. And never forget, like, you got to get on with these people at the same time. So I think that kind of caused a divide in WG in a sense, and I think that's obviously what's led to the disband eventually. I know I mean, if they didn't qualify for WSG, this would have happened ages ago. Like, I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has felt like for quite some time that they were being held together more by their commitments rather than by an active desire to keep playing together. Because I know Castaway since remind me again, Kaameel, when was EGE? I forget.
It was the Masters finals was it July last year?
Yeah, it was like July,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, July.
But already then, Costa was like, "Yo, guys, I want out. Like, I want to go." He wanted to go to sea for a really long time. So I think you're definitely spot on with the fact that had it not been for qualifying for everything and winning everything and still needing to play for future tournaments you qualified in, they definitely would have, like Travis especially, would probably have left immediately after EGE.
Yeah. So I think another thing that's contributed to this is obviously okay, Donnie's been gone for a while now, but now we see Travis has left, Mark 40 Frank has left, and now Donnie has left again. But this is like arguably the 3 best players to ever have graced DotA in South Africa have now left DotA.
Yeah.
And these are the people that you'd usually build a team around. I know Mark wasn't even in the scene for a long time, but he was a player to be like, hey, I'm going to get this guy in my team, and I'm going to build a team around him. And we've lost a lot of those players at the moment. I mean, the scene isn't big in itself. And now we've lost 3 of arguably the best players, right?
I have to agree that like it is tough in SA. Like we look at I don't know if you can look at Lepro's move like a greedy thing or even like Bravado's early in the year, but at the same time there's like where do you choose from? There's only such a small pool of players rather that it has to become hostile at that point, right?
Yeah.
But on the other note of Castaway, 40 Frank and Donnie, I mean that I think it's good for the scene. Okay, maybe they're not active on social media as I'd like them to be, like the Bravado guys overseas. But man, it's so inspiring to see these guys, these top players in South Africa, go and try actually make it as pro players. And look at it, Donnie's top 100 ranked already. Mark sitting at about the 250 mark, and Castaway, I believe, will be leaving next week Wednesday. So, I mean, it's happening, guys. It's happening. We have players trying to make it in the pro scene in South African Dota 2. It's amazing.
Yeah, one of the things that's great about it as well is that new up-and-coming players know for a fact that it always sucks to be the first one to try to do something, right? But just simply knowing that something is possible to do in advance makes it a lot easier to pull off. You don't feel like you necessarily have to be the pioneer, the trendsetter. You can just be like, instead of saying, like, you can say, I want to be the next Donnie, I want to be the next Castaway, do these things. You don't have to just be, yo, I want to be the first South African to make it playing overseas. Now that there's a base to work from, it's easier to have ambition when there's precedent for it. No one ever wants to really be the first one to try something out. So, and plus it's probably good overall for our confidence, right? Like, because I think South Africans probably have a very, like it's weird when you play pubs, right? Well, to prove yourself here at first, but then still have the potential to make it overseas. And, Bravado, I think probably the biggest help in that regard is going to be BVDCS. That's probably helping a huge amount just to make that. Yo, guys, you can still grind in SA, but still try and make it overseas if you work hard enough.
Just like I want to use like an old classics, another sport analogy. I'm just going to use like Benny McCarthy as an example. Like when he played for Blackburn Rovers in the Premier League, and he like almost won the Golden Boot. He may have even won. I'm not even sure, but he scored like 19 goals in the season. Like, can you imagine the positive impact that would have in South Africa in terms of just at a like in football in general? Like it would have a massive impact. And the same thing can be said for, let's say we see Donnie and Mark and Travis maybe representing different teams, but making it on the international stage. Like, can you imagine what that does for esports in South Africa? It's huge. Like, it's massive.
Also, that's a reason to invest, right? If I'm a TO or whatever, I'm thinking, okay, well, the money I invest in SA, it might be nice, but does it pay off in the long run? And it helps a lot if you can see, oh, okay, it actually does. Like, there's a reason to want to grow this scene because here there's a potential pool of players that can easily reap you, give you a great ROI in the long run, like across the board internationally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, for sure. Like, I think in this podcast, I've actually forgot to actually give a disclaimer at the start. We're probably going to criticize a lot of things during this next 35 minutes or so, but definitely one of the beacons of inspiration in our 2018 season is definitely that Bravado team going overseas and just seeing how well they do. They're like a fully established tier 2 team, right? Already. And then it's going to be interesting to see how Mark, Donnie, and Mr. Travis Castaway does there as well.
Yeah, but I feel like within the scene at the moment, though, there's like a lot of negative stuff kind of happening. I know.
Yeah.
For me, like just in terms of Dota, like Dota, South African teams do not scrim each other.
Yeah.
And that it baffles me. It really baffles me because how do we get better if we don't practice against the best people in our country? Like we don't learn anything off each other. All we do is play EU scrims, and maybe I don't know. Maybe you get like an EU scrim team partner that you really need. Like, but you need. I feel like in order to be able to improve, you need to be playing the same opponents like kind of over and over in a repetitive.
Yeah, someone who
forms
learns
almost.
you.
Yeah. So this is what we did last. Oh, it was like 2 years ago. But we played AVG scrimmed Energy. It was before we kicked Adam from AVG. We scrimmed Energy like I don't know. It must have been like 20 times in like 2 weeks, or maybe even less. No, it was like 10 or 15. But we destroyed them, like utterly destroyed them, and then eventually we stopped scrimming them. And what did Energy do? They kept on playing, they kept on grinding, and all of a sudden they were stomping us. Just like, and they learned so much from scrimming us, like what not to do, what this and like what that, and it's just like this progressive learning curve that you get from scrimming people you know, and yeah, like I don't understand the mentality of we're gonna hold our strats, you know. Like,
Save strats for TI, bro.
Like it doesn't make any sense.
We have, I mean, in 2018 we have one tournament, right? There's Comic Con, which is in a couple of months from now. I mean, from now till then, there is no real point in hiding strats, right? The meta is gonna change so much by that point that like, what is even a strat to hide? But yeah, what are some other things you guys think you can do to sort of improve the scene? Like I think Bob, you wanted to speak about coaches, right? The importance of coaches in Dota or in just coaches in general.
Yeah, so that's like a big one, right? So we at APG we kind of recently got a coach who coaches Bone 7, and he plays in like his own team. Well, he coaches Bone 7's team, and
come on, give us the name, Bob.
His name's like Goddess or something, but his name's John. His name's John. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
We call him John. I don't really call him his English name, but it was very refreshing in the sense that he gives like a different view on Dota, but it was very like educated in the sense that, I mean, his job is to be a Dota coach, right? But like, what really got me was, especially because like I feel like in South Africa we think we like kind of big fish in like a small pond, but in my opinion we kind of all just small fish. Like none of us are actually that good, and I use the analogy to normal sports again. Like when you learn, or even when you learn something, you learn the basics first. And I feel like in South African Dota, we do not understand the basics of Dota. And this is what our coaches brought into us at the moment. Understand the basics. And like even just going, what is our objective with Dota? How do you win a Dota game? Well, you kill the throne, right? And you start from there. How do you kill the throne? Okay, you lane and you kill creeps, you get more items, etc., etc. You get towers, and like it all develops from like a macro sense of how the game is played, and then eventually you can start to break down it into it's like the macro levels of Dota, and that where it becomes extremely difficult, right? Let's not forget that Dota is an extremely complex game. Like it is. I cannot even begin to like describe. If you think you know something about Dota, you're wrong. There's like if there's like a certain scenario played out in front of you, and you think, okay, this is the only way you can play this. Telling you now, it's most likely not the case. There's always
me and
different
Snare know that
aspects to it,
firsthand, right? We'll be loaded into a game, be like, oh, anti-mage versus Morphling, easy game. This team's gonna win, and then we just get completely proven wrong. Like 5 minutes later, we're like, well, that's casted knowledge like, right there.
This is what our coaches introduced us. I'm not sure. This is why we really liked him, right? We tried out a few others and didn't work. So he introduced us into the basics of Dota, and I feel like what South Africans have a big lack of understanding is of the basics of the game. If you don't understand the basics of the game, how can you develop further? Like we see like all these cool plays that happen, and oh yeah, anti-mage win this item, or this guy did this at this time against this hero. But do we understand why? Do we understand why he built this item against this? You know what I mean? Like it's extremely complicated, and I feel like without coaches, especially in South Africa, we are not exposed to that basic level or that basic understanding.
Do you feel as well that that lack of basic understanding results in the situation we're in now, where there's no real meta in SA. It's just more like
Yes,
people
exactly.
pick up trends, but no one's able to really innovate something brand new, because no one understands the game on a deep enough level to try and exploit the current meta picks in advance, rather than waiting for some EU person to figure out what the counter to a
Yeah.
particular strategy is.
It's like this Visage pick. I, for one, I do not know how to play against Visage, and thought about it quite a bit, and eventually I just like gave up, and I said just like ban the hero. But like, you need to figure out this hero's innate weaknesses, essentially. Like, and you hear,
Don't
okay,
pick
Crimson
AA.
Guard is good against Visage because you can just ignore him eventually, you know, for 12 seconds in a fight. But what do I do until I don't have a Crimson Guard? Like, how do I play against this hero? And stuff like that. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like, and for me, like Sin 5 are the team that I noticed the most that seems to lack this basic understanding. And it comes down into, you can see it in their macro decisions, right? Because obviously they understand the macro level of the game, but it's those macro level basics where you see Sin 5 push high ground and they just get wiped. They get like 5-man wipes over and over and over. And sometimes they don't, but majority of the time they do. And the thing that our coach told us was like, you don't ever need to go high ground until you're ready. Like, going high ground before you have certain items. Like, why would you go high ground without a BKB or something like that? You know, you don't have to end the game at a certain point. Like, you can farm into the late game, and you can keep them in the mid game. If your lineup is mid game based orientated, you keep the enemy team in the mid game, in their mid game, and you farm to your late game, and then you fight them, right? Like, that's a kind of like theory that he had. And it's just like, yeah, it's decision making, man. Like, making the wrong decisions when there's no decision to be made, essentially. That makes sense.
I think with Sin 5, probably the place you see this the most, the point that you're reaching to now, is that of all the, let's say, the top 4 teams, not that there's any distinction anymore, it's basically top 1 and then the rest. Sin 5 is probably least likely to win a game where they lose the lanes. And for me, that's never a good sign, right? Where if you necessarily need to dominate your lanes in order to win any kind of game, even if you have a draft that's better suited for different stages, or when the game's supposed to be played out, it's probably not a good idea. It's probably not a good thing. It's like you need to change some fundamental understanding, because there'll be games where I'll see where Sin 5 has a decent draft, a draft that doesn't need to win the lanes, where it's like, if you just don't mess this up, you'll be fine. But then, then the lanes will just go horribly. Traxion will die 2-3 times trying to gank mid. And then it's like, oh, game's not really winnable for them. And not necessarily because of the heroes, but you can just see that they don't know how to play through this period of the game in order to get the victory.
Yeah, I feel like on that note, on terms of winning the lanes, I feel like that's a thing of maturity. I think you could see, like, when Sin 5 or Elite Pro played against each other, or when they played against WRG, right? WRG almost never completely dominated either Sin 5 or Elite Pro in the laning phase. But when it hits the mid game, they can transition whether they dominated the laning phase or not. Where what Sin 5 or Elite Pro, when they played against each other, or WRG, you always saw the team that won the laning phase won the game almost every single time, right? They had to play to win it. And the odd thing about Sin 5 for me is they are really like early game aggressive. Like, they want to win by the mid game sort of team, but when they draft to the laning, they don't really draft for the laning phase, if you know what I mean. Like, the way EG set up to like sort of win 3 lanes at once. I know it's an extreme example because it's such a high level, but they, like a team like EG, exclusively drafts for the laning phase, where Sin 5, they kind of need that laning phase advantage, but they don't particularly draft for the laning phase either. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, so it's kind of identifying who's the most important hero on your team and who's the most important hero on their team, and how do they win the laning phase, and how do we win the laning phase, or how do we not lose the laning phase?
Yeah.
You got to be asking yourself all these questions, and these are the questions you ask yourself when the draft ends or during the draft. Like, what hero do I pick to win us the lanes? What hero do I pick to not lose the lanes? How do I set up my lanes? And even then, you need to have a plan. This is what was really interesting to me, right? So our coach was telling us, we have a plan for 10 minutes of the game. We then have a plan for the next 10 minutes of the game, and then we have a plan for the next 10 minutes. These pro level teams think on a level of 30 seconds to a minute. They have a plan for like going every 30 seconds to a minute. Can you imagine that like level of thought that goes into that? So they have a plan like, okay, this hero is going to run here at this time. What do we do to counteract that? How do we get the most up the map essentially? That's like, I mean, that's just next level stuff, but like just starting to identify on the basics, on the first 10 minutes of the game, or 8 minutes if you want to include that for the laning phase. How do we lane? Who's our most important hero? Like what hero is going to take us into the area of the game where we're going to be the strongest in a sense? Because you never draft a draft and you think, oh, we've lost. You always have a plan, right? You never pick your hero and think, oh, we're in so much trouble right now.
Have a plan.
Yeah, and then you need to understand your plan and you need to know how to execute it.
So I've got a question for you guys, right? One of the things that it's sort of building on this in terms of the understanding of the game. There seems to be a huge problem in terms of a lack of leadership capabilities, as in there's not that many strong captains, but more so than that, I feel like, especially the more established teams, your lead pros, well, not really, but too many teams aren't giving, or too many big teams aren't necessarily giving the kids the go ahead. I think right now the only young captain is Cloud, I think.
Oh man. Yeah, so I'm just going to interrupt you right there. This is what I wanted to do in APG, right? Like, I wanted to build a team around young players. And I think, I mean, it's proven difficult, right? But I feel like I've tried the captain thing, it's actually extremely difficult. It's like, knowing to do what when, but it's hard from a support position because you get to a point in the game and you need your cores to take over the game. They are the strongest hero. They are stronger than you, right? If I play a 1v1, or like if I play a 1v1 against Miracle and you give me a 3-item head start against him, I'm gonna beat him. I'm pretty sure, right? You give me like 3 rapiers, I'll one-shot him. Like, you know what I mean? You gotta play around. Well, that's probably a bad example, but you gotta play around your strong heroes. And the people playing those heroes should know what's best throughout that time of the game. And I feel like, I'm not sure if this is even answering your question, but like, captaining isn't usually just one person. I feel like the captain may have an overall game plan, and they will maybe have final say in calls, but throughout the game, leadership in a sense kind of changes per player or whatever hero is strong, right? I think they need to start making the shot calls, and I feel like that's where we lack, in the sense that those players don't understand that it's their time to stand up, right? Even if you make the wrong call, like, so be it.
I feel like we actually lack on both ends, because you get that sort of that core player who understands, right, guys, I have my BKB, I'm stronger than all of them now, this is the time to fight, I'm ready, we can go. But I feel like we also lack on that sort of, on the end where, you know, like, if anybody who's watched the TI movie with Liquid and how Kuroki keeps his players calm, inspires them, like, calm down, it's just a game, don't worry about it, the finals, where he can be confident in himself, and so much so that he can lift up 4 other younger guys, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we lack leadership on that end, and we lack even like the game understanding as a core to transition. But then again, that again comes through we like a small, just the small pool we have. We only have so many people, so we have, I mean, a good example. This is a bit flavy, but like maybe like Depu is a really great player, but maybe questionable how he is in personality. But you don't have the, like, you can't be like, okay, we don't like how you are, so we don't want you anymore, because we only have, there's only one Depu that's that good in SA, right?
Wait, is there anyone left who's actually on that level in the mid lane anymore after Castaway bounced?
I mean, forget, like, just an example, like we don't have. You have to find, like, to find the right personality and to find the right DotA skill in South Africa. It's tough.
Hence the need for coaches, right? To try and normalize that skill level, to try and get everyone on the same page. And I feel like, I mean, that's another thing on its own, is finding the right coach, because finding the right coach is just as important as finding like the right player, in a sense. Like, the personality needs to fit the team, like you say.
100%. And I mean, sports is a good way to look at it. You will find no self-respecting sports team or sportsman that goes around without having a coach.
Yeah.
And a really good one. Like, you take pride in how good your coach is. You're like, this guy keeps us together. But it's also like, we also keep forgetting. I think one thing that players in South Africa don't always grasp is the psychological toll that this game takes on you. The amount of preparation that goes into it. The feeling of actually just being in a game and what losing can do to you after that much preparation, what winning can do and how to keep winning, because winning can also burn you out. And there's just so much outside of the pure game itself.
I agree so
people
much.
aren't interested in. People are just like, oh, you just need to get good and be good at the game. And it's like, it's really deeper than that, because there's probably a bevy of players who are actually really good, but because they're psychologically not stable, can't seem to find success in the game. But if you change that, that could do better as well. But we're not even like, we've already addressed two major pillars of problems that most people would be sort of willing to grapple with. But the moment you move on to the fact that Dota's an extremely emotional game, then the conversation shuts down completely. It's like, nah, we can't even talk about that fact, because
I mean,
who cares?
Like all those outside factors, right? Like sleeping enough, like eating proper foods, exercising regularly, like that stuff affects your Dota, man. Like
it does. And like in Dota and in esports, we laugh about this, right? Like I remember after the EG Masters, then Snare was talking to the WRG guys when we went for our after party, and after Travis, after hearing what Snare had to say, he's like, wow, I actually wish we could have like Snare come in as like our psychologist for our team and like work. And we all like laughed and giggled about it. But the fact is, in sports, you would have a psychologist for your team. You would have a nutritionist. You have multiple physical trainers to make sure you in correct shape, correct everything. You have doctors regulated there for your team to make sure your players are fit for the games. There's so much that goes into it, and esports is still young, and I feel like we're only going to get there one day. I mean, SA esports is still even more behind, but at some point, these things won't be a joke anymore. It'll be full time for so many people.
Yeah, and the scene is definitely in development phase, and probably even another topic for another time is the speed at which we developed. And I feel like the esports central. I mean, shout out to them. I think they're doing a great job.
That was a great article.
Making us more aware of these things, like letting us know what's happening in the scene a bit more, and it's quite refreshing in a sense.
We actually have like a South African go-to gamers where we can go look and see when there's games being played, when there's streams on. Just that alone, forget even the great content they put out.
Yeah,
helps a lot. And now on that topic where we're going to like the scene getting too big too fast, I'm gonna make a shout out here to Extremes for writing that article he wrote. I will link it in the description. Just go take a read on it. And yeah, let's talk about TOs here for a little bit. I feel like there's almost a sense of like lack of integrity with a lot of TOs recently. We had like Mega 8 announce a tournament and have a qualifier played in October, which was said to be a LAN event played in the first quarter of the next year. No announcement from them. Complete silence. We have Arena sort of on a similar topic. I mean, Arena
has been like postponing the LAN since like January last year.
But I mean, how do you guys feel that affects the scene? Like, you like Mega 8 used to be a thing. Like it was like a big thing. It was hosted, like MTN used to fund it, all that kind of stuff. It gave us a sense of security, right? That we're gonna have this tournament and it's gonna be professional and it's gonna be done. But now we can't even get a response for a tweet for a lot of these things, and it's I don't know. It makes me feel nervous as a sort of personality in the scene and who wants to be doing and be active in the South African scene. Like, how do you be active when there's nothing to be active for?
I think the primary issue at hand is that 2016 and 2017, when a lot of the shit started picking up, before that, I think things were, I wouldn't say more stable, but given that people didn't have expectations of a big LAN happening, our motivation to be necessarily involved, knowing that we're all part of a building process. We all knew we're getting into this, that this isn't America, this isn't Russia, this isn't China, this is a place where you might have 1 or 2 LANs a year. We're all expecting to have that Rage LAN, maybe one extra one, but beyond that, we're just trying to build each other up slowly but surely, try and make this thing work out. But then 16, 17, with a bunch of money being pumped into it, I definitely think Axe was right when he says that it creates this perception that growth is going to be eternal, and as a result you stop paying attention to the basics. You stop paying attention to, I don't know, scrimming. Let's just scrim each other, play each other, because we don't need to save strats. We just need to get better first and foremost. We don't pay attention to, oh, which new young players, like, are there new teams that are forming with new young players that we should look out for and play against them? Nobody cares about that. It's just, yo, if you're not playing for a Masters team, fuck you, basically. No one pays attention to just simply finding out what other people in the scene are doing, right? Like, no one wants to talk to each other. If you're not at a LAN or whatever, then we don't communicate. So
the lack of respect, really.
Yeah, just like it feels like the amount of money pumped into it was for a scene 5 years down the line, not for a scene where it was. And where it was, we didn't need the money. The money as it was spent was a bad idea. If it was spent like more spaced out across the board over a year, lots of smaller tournaments, getting people just used to the idea of playing professionally, because now it feels like the only reason you want to come out, you're just looking at the calendar. When's the next big LAN? If there's no next big LAN, then fuck it. There's no reason to really be involved in SA esports. And yeah, that's how I feel we were affected by the massive prize pools that came in from that year onwards.
I mean, as somebody who started like I probably majorly got into the scene only last year. I mean, to me, it looked like we actually made it in SA esports. We had ESL, we had multiple big LANs, we had like so much announced. Even the year before, I was going to malls and watching Castaway play against Bravado. I was like, wow, we've made it to the big time. And 2018, it's just not been like that. I mean, we've had the promises, we've had a lot of things, and it's just nothing. I mean, VS, the last time we did our podcast, the people we criticized the most are the only ones still having a big LAN event. We see in September.
I thought a lot about what I said about VS Gaming last time, but essentially they're on like leg for 8 months or 9 months. It fits the scene well at the moment, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, it does. Because what else must players do if there's not the Masters games to be played?
What if we play a league over 2 weeks? What do we do for the rest of the 8 months? So I mean, it kind of works out. Maybe I was a bit harsh back then, but like, obviously that's not going to work going forward. But at this point in time, it's kind of perfect in a sense. But my big issue with the tournament organizers is it's empty promises, right? It's, hey, we're going to have a LAN next year, and then it's saying nothing about the LAN. And when questioned on it, they get very offended, or they say nothing.
That's why my issue with Arena came, that initially I wasn't like upset with Arena or Luca or anything like that, because I looked at it and I was like, wow, I wonder what happened. Did a tournament sponsor pull out? What happened? And I think you summed it up beautifully in a tweet that you're like, you'd like tournament organizers just to be honest with us, because then we don't know. It's hard to be upset when you see a guy say like, you know what, guys, I messed up. The Red Bull pulled out. I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry I wasted your guys' time. It happened. But now when people are tweeting you, asking you what's going on, and then you like giving snarky replies and like making sarcastic tweets about why people are messaging you, it's like, hello, have some perspective. Be a bit humble, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you were a drug addict and you came and told me about your problem with drugs, and I went and tweeted and I shamed you on social media, like, that makes me look bad, right? Like,
right.
If you come up and be upfront and honest with me about an issue you're having, and I go and flame you, like, I'm a bad person then, right? If you explain the situation to me, I'm gonna be like, okay, well, okay, either I accept it and I do nothing about it, or maybe I'm in a position to help you. Like, you never know, right? The truth never doesn't get you anywhere, right? Lying is always a problem, or hiding the truth, should I say?
Oh yeah, hiding the truth doesn't get you anywhere. That's the correct thing you're trying to say.
Yeah,
and there's really a time limit on that, right? There's only so long where, because now also, I think the biggest problem is a lack of credibility, and also it creates a situation where you're suspicious about everything. You can't get excited about anything that happens because you're like, well, we've heard that shit before.
So this is exactly what happened with Arena, right? I think they made an announcement. It was either like November or December last year, where they said, I will release information later in the month about the OCS LAN. And I read the exact same sentence again in January, I think. And I read the exact same sentence again in March. And I was like, I've seen this 2 or 3 times before. Like, what is happening? Like you said, just that time is just...
You lose trust, right?
Yeah.
A good example would be like, Middle State do a lot of small scale events, right? I'm a big fan of those kind of things. So they announced that Caster thing. There was a while, it was announced in like June, July or whatever, and then it was like 2 or 3 months before they announced the winner or anything. But at no stage did any of us think that they're not going to announce the winner, or it's like a big catastrophe is going to happen with it, because we know we've seen 100 other events that Metal State have done, and they've been
Yeah.
good on.
So like
Yeah.
if Arena announced their LAN happening at Caesar's Palace for November, would any of us believe them? Probably not. I mean, I wouldn't. There's no
Yeah.
way. So
That's
credibility comes with it, as you said.
that, and that's just really sad, right? Because we have a big player now that somewhere we used to respect a lot, and now it gets just taken away from us. And it's just sad for everybody, the people involved, for Arena, for us, the players, casters. Because if like that's I think the big thing in SA Esports is if one of us takes a hit, be it a CS:GO player, a DotA caster, anything, a TO, we all take the hit just because of how small we are.
That's probably something that, I mean, I haven't actually thought about it really either. Is that like the stuff you say can kind of reflect badly on everyone, but like especially when it comes to like tournament organizers and stuff.
In defense of TOs, like we do have. I mean, we can, as people in the scene, be like about entitled on Twitter, like making snarky tweets and stuff all the time when we really don't need to be. But at the same time, like you said, it's lack of credibility. Sorry for interrupting you there, Bob.
That's fine. I think that's pretty much what I was gonna say anyway.
Yeah.
The one easy fix I think that's available is just if you haven't confirmed a LAN date yet, it's not necessary to plan your competition around the idea of having a LAN. Like if you say, why not, you can have two things, right? You can just say, all right, we'll have this online portion of the competition, then afterwards you can use results from that to seed for the LAN. I don't see how that's different from doing a seeding leg and then a LAN competition just for the prize giveaways. You can just have, even if you have half the prize pool split in multiple directions, I don't think that's necessarily a terrible thing. It's like, oh, just don't gaslight people. Just shouldn't feel like people are like, oh, it's gonna happen, and then it just never does.
It never does, right?
Yeah, it feels like you're that kid, who's being told that your dad's coming home from buying cigarettes.
Oh gosh, hitting the feels here, man.
Yeah.
And like, what do you guys think? I'm of opinion, right? Like, we're not businessmen, but I say, like, a business point of view, if you're hosting events, right, is it the smart decision to be like, okay, I'm going to compete with VS Gaming here, who have been doing these massive things for years now, and I'm going to try host another 500,000 rand tournament similar to their time and be like a competition to them, or be like, you know what, I have 500,000 rand, let's split it up between, so I can host 4 tournaments in a year for 50,000 rand, and then we're creating a sustainable scene as well, right?
Yeah. And there's different approaches, as you said, right, depending on what you want and things like that. But VS Gaming have been in the market for a while, and they have an experience of dealing with these events. So I would say, depending on the experience of the tournament organizer, would depend on that answer, right? If they've experienced, yes, they can host a big tournament, perhaps. If they're inexperienced, I would say, try host 1 or 2 and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Rather chill. There's no rush.
Yeah.
People, also, the one advantage I think that's available to people is when you're trying to compete with VS Gaming, unless you're always, no matter what, you're going to be at a disadvantage, right? Like you guys said, they've been doing this for a long time, so therefore they have that experience. They've got that brand reputation that they can probably get greater leeway with like venues and sponsorship deals. And also, just having been around as long as they have, and having telecom money, you have greater resources. But because of the fact, like, so you're never going to compete with them. So why try? Like, you don't have to. You don't have to be. Like, I think part of the problem is that people got into this arms race of prize pools with VS Gaming, or the arms race we were just never going to win. So when people were like, we can't win, now it's too late, because now you created the expectation that you said you could win. So what's happening? Why now do you feel the need to bow out? Instead of just relax, just a little bit on the way, just bit by bit, you can just build it up.
So let's use the League Pro LAN in Nelspruit, which happened.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't there, but I would say small LAN. It seemed pretty successful, but there were a few issues, I would imagine. I think one was the location, right? Like, not many people could get to the LAN.
Yeah.
They were
I also wanted to touch on this, right? Sorry to interrupt. I want to just cut you off here, Bob. I was going to bring this up, right? I feel like the League Pro LAN is a perfect example here. I feel like it was, obviously, every LAN we go to, we've been to Rage for the past 5 years, all of us. There's always going to be 1 or 2 hiccups. Location, probably not the greatest situation, being in Nelspruit, but this is where I feel like the community kind of lacks. I mean, for the CS, the CS tournament at that LAN, there were 16 teams there. For the Dota, we had 4 teams. Like, it's really sad to see that we weren't getting, like, like the players, us as players, weren't supporting the local LANs, right? Maybe if it's in Joburg, I would actually like to see people show up to a 20,000 rand LAN, because it's way more than what else you're going to get. Before, there wasn't these massive prize pools. People used to go to LANs before. We have to support, at the same time, it's a give and take situation.
Yeah,
like, you have to support as well.
Yeah. You can't be
yeah.
bougie without putting in your effort, but yeah, you were saying.
I was just gonna say APG. I mean, APG wanted to go to the LAN, but we didn't. Just mainly because of availability of players. I think. I can imagine it was in the forefront of their minds. I feel like you want to be your MGO as an MGO. You want to be representing these LANs. You want to be showing support. You know.
Yeah. As Energy, you have a team that's waiting around doing nothing. They missed. They didn't sign up for Masters, and they're chilling. Send your team to the LAN. You're a big MGO. That's what you're supposed to do. Support your players in these kind of things. Show your support to the scene. Grow the thing, right?
Yeah.
I think that we need to be able to win without winning ourselves. Sorry, yeah.
Don't sit back and complain about female leagues. Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah, even the female league thing. Let's actually touch on that. I mean, I'm gonna be blunt here. How stupid can all of you people be opposing this thing that you think it's a bad thing? I just said we're all in the same boat here. If there's success in one area, i.e. a female league, we all reap the rewards of that. That's just something you have to understand. If you want to see a male Dota or a unisex rather CSGO tournament, go on the Metal State stream, watch it, comment, be active. Put that 100 viewers to 150 viewers. Say this is awesome. Can't wait for the next big event. Sponsors see that, they're like, nice. You know, the scene is actually growing. If if we can get 150 for a female league, imagine the 300 or 400 we get for the male or unisex league rather. You know.
Bro, but that's sexist. Why is there a female league just for the girls? You know, gaming is not a non-sexist space, bro. I didn't come here for sexism. So the fact that you want to come here and tell me that I can't play just because I have a penis is the most sexist thing I've ever heard in my life. And this, you see, this is the 21st century. This is 2018. When me as a man, I'm basically fucked. It's all a woman's century now, and it's the worst thing ever.
You know who's not sexist? Dude?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I agree with Kaameel what he says on that. And I think I actually lost my train of thought now after that brilliant meme. But
that was nuts, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I actually completely forgot about it now. The argument against the female league essentially is our male league is better quality.
Yeah.
Better quality player, right? And I don't disagree with that, but in a sense that taking out the context of building an esports scene, we were being competitive on the internet in terms of quality. And I feel like that's another issue entirely that we can speak about for days in South Africa, is that we don't get the viewers and the stream views because we are competing essentially with a lower quality product. I think we would agree with that in terms of skill level.
100%.
You're competing on an international stage, right? On the internet, like.
Yeah,
crazy.
If you're gonna use as quality and like, oh, we better quality players or whatever, then our whole scene is irrelevant because internationally you got 100 times the viewers, you got better casters, you got better players, you got everything is better. So if that's what you're basing it on, then pack up your computer and go outside because everything is worse.
Yep.
That's your thinking.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Well said, Mr. Bob. Well said.
Very well said. Yeah. But ultimately, I think I think the best way. I think it was Halbert who once said this to me. We were at, I forget which land, but he was like, he just wants to see a world in SA esports where he can spend a year not working, not casting, and not doing anything, or everyone that was there at the land is like, if all of us can spend a year not doing anything, but things are still great and the product is still great and everything still work well. If all the teams that are here right now drop off the face of the planet and there's new teams with either better or similar levels of quality to replace them, then it's fine. But the fact that we're always it feels like we're always playing zero sum, right? And I don't think until we stop thinking in zero sum, there's probably nothing we can do, right? Until like there's actually teams that are For instance, like just think about the conversation we're having. We're trying to convince bras that, guys, it's not bad for you to not have everything be about you, but be about all of us. You know, try and involve. How is there a downside to creating more people into gaming just because it doesn't benefit you primarily? But for the most part, you can't have that conversation. It's like, wasn't it you, Bob, or someone was talking about how the moment one TO says, "Yo, we're having a FIFA contest," suddenly, oh wow, FIFA. Nah, guys, why are you doing FIFA? You know, CS:GO and DotA have been out here this whole time. You know, what
Yeah.
about us? Why don't you guys love us? It's like, guys, it's fine. If there's more FIFA, it's not like DotA dies overnight. It's just now there's FIFA as well, and that's really okay. There's no problem with this.
I think Barry Lazada actually said it the best, right? We were having a similar conversation with him when he was on a podcast, and he's like, people just need to chill out. If there's a female CS:GO tournament, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be one for you later. Like,
Yeah.
we all, like he said, we all just been waiting so long to see our scene blow up the way it did in like 2016 and 2017 that we're just so scared it'll go away also, you know?
Yeah.
And you just need to chillax.
But like sometimes you gotta experiment on ways to grow the scene as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a science. It's more of an art.
Yes.
People are gonna make mistakes. We're gonna figure this shit out. But ultimately, as long as we each look at each other in good faith, right? I can't think if it's zero sum, then there's no way that the scene grows. But if it's possible for me to say, okay, you might have made a couple of missteps along the way, but I know your heart's in the right place. You're trying to grow the scene. It probably also decreases the amount of bad blood that we were talking about earlier. Like, it makes it less likely. For example, if that kind of mentality is in the scene, it's less likely that a lead pro kind of move happens. Even though it's probably actually, no, I'm lying. I think that move was going to happen regardless. Like,
Yeah, we see
WG
Real
broke
Madrid and
up.
Chelsea pull moves like this every time, you know?
Bro, why you always gonna trash my team, bro?
I'm not trashing. I'm just saying. The big boys is always going to come steal the Mo Salahs at some point. So yeah, I know it's something we haven't addressed all this podcast, but I think my final thing I'd like to leave this podcast with is I think we need to start with the grassroots here in SA. We need to build systems that whether if Bob retires and TKC retires and Chelsea retires, there's still 3 more players to come up and replace them. Where it's not just, oh my god, what are we gonna do? Mark and Donny are gone now. We have no more players to replace them. You know, that's my feeling. What we need in future. Bob,
Mo
give us your
Salah's a
final
one
thoughts.
season wonder. Those are my final.
There you.
We're all in this together, you know? If this fucks out and the SA scene goes nowhere, all of us are fucked, regardless of whose interests are taken care of first. So it's not zero sum. We'll all die or live together. So why not live together and figure that out?
I like that. Thank you everybody for tuning in and goodbye.